Now you can hear me. Give it a bit. All right, well, just to ensure, in case anyone's not reading the chat, you'll hear my audio in like 15 seconds after I say it, but we'll go live at 15 of the hour. We'll have, hopefully, a good presentation around Gatsby, how you can use Gatsby with WordPress and other headless CMSs, and then we'll do some quick demos. So Matthew just shared something in the chat. You should be hearing me at this point. If you're not, please, share in the chat that you're not hearing me, and I'll iron some things on my end, but you should be hearing me. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and mute until the 15 of the hour, and then we'll be good to go. So see everyone then. All right, 1 minute till game time. We'll go ahead and get started at 15 of the hour, pretty sharp. Maybe give a minute for everyone to kind of get here. If you hear in the background, I am making coffee, so I might go grab that in 1 sec, and then we'll get started around 16 of the hour, on some great Gatsby stuff. All right, 15 of the hour. So welcome everyone. We'll give everyone a minute or two to get joined, and then I'll go ahead and dive into my presentation. We'll have some demos, and then an open Q&A at the end. So yeah, first of all, thanks everyone for attending. Super excited to be here today. All right, 16 of the hour. To me, that's go time. So first of all, I am not Jack Selwood. For anyone who was closely monitoring the schedule, we had a late minute change. Jack had a personal issue come up, so I'm going to fill in as adequately as I can. So today I'll be talking about Gatsby and the shadows, basically how you can seamlessly use Gatsby with a tool stack that you may already know and love, something like WordPress, and how you can do so for the price of a latte, as Lacey just said in the chat. So who am I? Who's this Dustin guy? So first of all, I've been to FITC before. I was in Toronto, I believe 2 years ago. Probably met a few of you who are in the chat right now, so definitely say hello if that's the case. Wish we could have done this one in person, but you'll have to get the remote me, and the proxy will suffice. So like I said, my name is Dustin Schau. I'm head of product at Gatsby. For context, I started my career at Gatsby around 2 years ago as an engineer on the open source team. So definitely technical, definitely still code from time to time. And yeah, super excited today to chat about some things that are near and dear to my heart. So I live in San Francisco, moved about a year ago. It's been pretty great. And I am engaged to a triplet. So my fun fact is not really about me. One day we will get married. COVID has definitely put a damper on that, just like it put a damper on me not being able to be there in person. Wish I could have been. So enough about me. That's not really why you all came here. So my prompt is, think back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago, however long it was. What was the first website you built and how did you build it? So for me, this was my high school homepage. I built it, I think, with Dreamweaver. Definitely dove a little bit into the HTML, and until about 2 years ago, shockingly, it was still up. And so there were a lot of things right about this site. It performed really well. It got you enough information. There's also a lot of things wrong with this site. This was in the days of tables and frame sets. And so, you can see the layout works pretty good on this screen in this viewport, but that's about it. And so, how I built this was with Dreamweaver and HTML. Your first foray into web development may have been with MySpace, may have been with iWeb, or like me, maybe it was using Dreamweaver and HTML. I think back to those days, and my web teacher called Firefox Foxfire. So for an illustration of, like how kind of entry level I was, but I was still able to get something out there and share something with the world. And so what this really hit is several notions. I was able to get started effectively for free. The cheap hosting, God knows what we used back in the day. I kind of vaguely remember like Media Temple, but yeah, I don't know what everyone else used. And even for the lots of traffic, even for the, the 2,000 people in my little town in I was able to get out something pretty quick, pretty easily, and something that, delivered value to my end users. So did I achieve internet fame? No, but many others did. Whether it was GeoCities, whether it was MySpace, whether it was, a personal blog that got a lot of traffic. Like, these were kind of the good old days. This was the wild, wild west of how the web was built. And so, I think we've sort of lost track of this. And so, really, where did we go wrong? Well, first of all, there's this monstrosity, the GeoCities area where we'll throw more images, we'll throw more GIFs, and we'll just, be super bombastic to our end users. But this really isn't where we went wrong. And to explain where we went wrong, I wanted to kind of take a step back. And so I don't know if anyone has used iWeb. iWeb was a tool, I don't know, in the early 2000s, where, anyone, regardless of skill level, was able to get something reasonably sophisticated reasonably quickly. And so iWeb, Dreamweaver, these are all tools that help hobbyists, that help kind of people who want to create content achieve that creation, get something out there and share it with their end users. And so there's a lot of good things about iWeb. iWeb had a drag and drop UI. It had themes and page templates. Code was kind of optional. You can kind of do low to no code, just like you could in Dreamweaver. It was integrated with tools, and you had something that's surprisingly novel then, which was a one-click publish and deploy. The days of publishing to an FTP server, I'm sure many of us have horror stories of where we've taken down our server, overwritten content, just by manually clicking and dragging and publishing. That was our CI/CD workflow back in the day. And, how did we get this thing live? How did we get this thing to our end users? Probably use something like GoDaddy, blast from the past, still very much around, but it doesn't quite look like this. And so, getting something up and running was a few steps. It was getting a simple server set up, getting a simple, HTML website set up, buying a domain name, and then ultimately shouting about it through the interweb. And so this kind of workflow worked pretty well. However, there's a problem here. When I think back to my high school homepage, I was manually editing HTML by hand when we wanted to add a news post, when we wanted to add an announcement. I remember when school was canceled one day, I went and added a banner, with HTML to that. And that was how we communicated, that something was going on. As Ward said in the chat, I'll highlight that, yes, I was editing in production, kind of, again, the wild, wild west days. But those wild, wild west days don't truly scale all that well. When I think about what we were trying to deliver, we were trying to deliver an experience where others can publish content, where it's not just me who's the chief arbiter, who's the kind of the chief decision maker on all of the content that gets published. What I wanted is a way to set up a website and then to empower others to be able to contribute to that website really quickly, really easily, and really cheaply. So enter, the CMS, a novel concept then. So the CMS, the content management system, had a lot going for it. There's one-click installs. There's dynamic templates, server-side rendered content. So when you publish something, it's immediately available to all of your users. You can edit anywhere, it's a great web-based admin tool. You could get custom themes, and then you can extend kind of your overall user experience with plugins, really easily and really quickly. And so, this was better. This solved the problem of how do I publish content? How do I not manually edit HTML? How do I empower kind of the people creating content? Think back to those days, the people who wanted to announce that school was canceling. Well, CMS was a great choice. So now let's revisit, what was so great about the good old days? Well, could we get started for free? A little bit. Was it cheap hosting? Not so much. Lots of traffic. No, doesn't always handle lots of traffic particularly well. A surge of traffic is going to increase my bill by a factor of how much that traffic was. And then we're not really going to achieve that internet fame, that internet notoriety that we really need. We're not going to be able to scale. And what it actually led to is, what people would do when they were setting up something with WordPress, with Drupal, with other of these monolithic CMS. You'd buy a hosting packages, you'd read some docs, you'd learn the way of how content management works in CMS of choice. We'd have shared hosting, and ultimately, what oftentimes happens is you get a little bit of internet shame. So as of 2 hours ago, this was the demo I'll be sharing in a bit. This was my WordPress site. And so I'll go into the details of what experience this is delivering and how we can improve it. But this is just an illustration of a concept that I hold near and dear to my heart, which is how well does something fail? And something like WordPress, something like Drupal, they don't always fail particularly gracefully. And so I fixed it. I edited in production. But again, not really an experience that I was happy to deliver to my users. And I want to talk about something, and again, to illustrate more about why this is. When we think of WordPress and scaling and configuring servers, you're kind of just dragging and dropping. You're increasing the size of this box without a lot of intentional thought around, is this a thing I should actually be doing? And so scaling is throwing more money at the problem and hoping that your servers aren't overloading. These are things that I really don't want to care about. And I really don't want to throw more money at a problem. I want to be able to just scale infinitely, with my content, with my audience, without needing to pay more. So, have we really hit that mark with these more modern solutions, with these more kind of monolithic CMSs? And overall, my answer here is, not so much. There's still challenges here. This is not solved territory, particularly when we think back and harken back to how easy it was in the olden days. Editing HTML, publishing with Dreamweaver, drag and dropping HTML. There's that. I don't want to be too fond for those days, but there's actually a real appeal to this. And I'd like to introduce something that I think is better. To the surprise of no one, what I think is better is this notion of the Jamstack. I sort of vaguely do not like this term whatsoever. I think that when you kind of broaden everything, what is the web made of? Well, the web is made of JavaScript, APIs, and markup. And so in any scenario, I can nitpick the term, but people have latched on to this as a term. And so when I think of the Jamstack, I think of using a tool like Gatsby, which is a static site generator, does it quite well, and then kind of decoupling, whether it's an API, which an API is provided by the monolithic CMS, whether it's an API for search, powered by Algolia, whether it's an API for Auth0. I think of the Jamstack as an effort to decouple and in doing so, enable those disparate audiences to kind of choose the tools that they need to be effective without sacrificing either user's experience. So I wanted to go a bit higher level, maybe even a bit philosophical about the value of the Jamstack and the environment that we're all in. And so I think one term described this environment particularly well. And to me, the Jamstack is a disruptive innovation. Well, you're probably wondering, all right, Dustin, cool. What the hell does this term mean? What is a disruptive innovation? And so to me, it's easier to kind of define it by showing some examples. And so there's a great Harvard Business Review, which is linked to in these slides. And one of the sentences, one of the kind of quotes when you see disruptive innovation, one of the outcomes is a smaller company with fewer resources is able to challenge established incumbent businesses. So I think we're in this environment with the Jamstack. And so what this ends up looking like is the entrant, which is a player in the Jamstack, of which Gatsby is squarely in, comes in and serves the lower priced and underserved market. That's really what we're seeing right now in the Jamstack. You're seeing a bit of a race to the bottom. You're seeing builds and deploys, which have kind of become a commodity. Domain name registration. All of these are kind of like table stakes requirements for a player in the Jamstack that's serving this underserved market. That's kind of introducing a lower level, a cheaper kind of introduction to using the Jamstack and to providing a better way to build for the web. The incumbent in this scenario, they focus on higher and higher deal size, neglecting this underserved market, which of course creates an opportunity. So the incumbents chasing higher profitability in more demanding segments tend not to respond vigorously. Really what this is creating is incumbents get fat and happy. The upstart, scrappy startup, which can move faster, in my opinion, the Jamstack is able to respond vigorously. It's able to rapidly iterate. It's able to deliver value, to this underserved market by focusing and then by broadening up. So, to my mind, Jamstack with Gatsby squarely in the Jamstack is a disruptive innovation, and we're seeing the space emerge right before our very eyes. So again, I mentioned this earlier, but builds, deploys, and hosting are becoming commoditized. This is what is happening. It's a race to the bottom. It's a race on who can do it faster, better, and cheaper. and deliver the best experience for our end user. To me, the next innovation for Jamstack is collaboration and CMS workflows. It's replicating the best parts of any CMS for every CMS with Gatsby and Gatsby Cloud. It's collaborating with Gatsby Cloud, which I'll show in a little bit, so that, when I think back to that earlier, to that earlier example of, me adding a banner to my high school's homepage. That was weak collaboration. I was choosing the tools that I wanted, but I wasn't encouraging others to choose the tools that they need to be effective. And what we're unlocking with the Jamstack is true collaboration with best of breed tools, with tools that each audience, each persona needs to be effective. So I, as a developer, get to choose the tools that I like, get to choose the tools, that make me happy, notably Gatsby. However, I'm not pulling anything away from the people who, still need to be effective. The content marketers, the marketing team, the growth team, each of these people can continue to use the tools that they like, and we stitch them together with the notion of Jamstack and with the notion of decoupling. And so, Matt Wollenweg, Automatic CEO, he has some thoughts on this space, and you might have seen some of these thoughts. So in a recent article published in the New Stack, he was quoted as saying, Jamstack is a regression for the vast majority of the people adopting it. The usability and functionality is even lower. And I think people in the Jamstack saw this quote, and maybe they were offended, or they're like, well, Matt Wollenweg, isn't getting it. He's not seeing the opportunity here. I don't see it this way. How I see it is, on the whole, Matt's more right than not here. What we're competing with is tools that have been around for 10, 15 years, and those tools have built-on features. These features need to be implemented in kind of a one-off fashion in the Jamstack. And so the level of sophistication in the Jamstack is less oftentimes than the monolith. However, again, when we think about this disruptive innovation, these kinds of areas, these kinds of pain points are being addressed daily, weekly, monthly. The Jamstack is growing at a rate that is, pretty phenomenal, and we are going to continue to see this disruptive innovation continue to chip away and eat away, at this space. However, there's a quote I like here. When we think of disruptive innovation, I think it rings quite true. It's first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then the quote normally goes, then you win. And to me, the true opportunity here, particularly in the Jamstack, is then you both win. I would love nothing more than if every user of WordPress continues to use WordPress, but then they use Gatsby as their Jamstack solution to deliver a better, faster, hearkening back to the olden days, a web where we were just publishing HTML, we were just seamlessly deploying it, and we were getting the workflows that we, as developers, as hobbyists, want. And then the other the team building a website, to me, we can all win. We can all do this together. Again, that's one of the great things about Gatsby. It's that you can use the tools that you like. You can use the tools that your team likes, and you can stitch them together with this unified plugin ecosystem, and then to build and deploy it with cloud. So, end of the day, to me, WordPress and Gatsby, all things are great. Nothing would thrill me more than if WordPress usage grows 10%, 20%, 30%, and continues to grow. And Gatsby is the unique way in which WordPress users can continue to use WordPress, and then you have an amazing, excellent, first-class experience in Gatsby. And so I'll leave you on one quote before I get into some demos and then some Q&A post the demos. And it's from Chris Dixon. And he said, what the smartest people do on the weekend is what everyone else would be doing during the week in 10 years. And this, to me, is an illustration of where Jamstack is. Now, do I think it's 10 years out? No. It'll happen quicker than that. But I do think that the Jamstack is in this phase where, in the broad market, it's more of a novelty than anything else. However, it's a novelty that's beginning to gain more and more traction and beginning to serve, that underserved market. It's becoming and is this disruptive innovation to the status quo, and we are going to continue to see, rapid iteration, rapid improvement, rapid features, chipping away bit by bit on what the monolithic CMS delivers. A/B testing, functions API, serverless rendering. These are all things that will be built into this Jamstack space, in which Gatsby will deliver uniquely as a disruptive innovation. So again, one of the appeals, kind of stitching together this narrative is use the tools that you like, use WordPress, but you don't have to write a single line of PHP. And I'm going to show how that actually works with a brief demo. So first, I always show what I built. And so let's pull this up. I have built a very simple Gatsby news application. Think of it like a very discounted version of like the New York Times. It has some nice features, it has a light mode, it has a dark mode. You can jump to the news today. You can see entertainment, food, opinion, politics, so on and so forth. And what's backing this, in the old days, would have been a bunch of static HTML. What's backing this now with Gatsby and with Gatsby Cloud is a WordPress instance as a CMS. I have that in my left-hand side. And then a Gatsby statically generated application built and deployed with Gatsby Cloud. And so what I want to first show is kind of what the experience is for the content collaborator, what the experience is for a person who publishes news at the Gatsby Times. So I'll add a post. We will say the classic hello world. So hello world from Gatsby and the Gatsby Times. Jamstack. So I'll apply some labels to this. I'll add a breaking tag. For whatever reason, this is breaking news. We'll add this, and then we'll go ahead and publish. And so what this is using behind the scenes is this is using a couple things. This is using a Gatsby source WordPress plugin. You'll hear more about this in November. And it's available now for kind of early testing, for beta testing. And so it's using Gatsby as the stitching together mechanism. And so this Gatsby source WordPress plugin, working uniquely well in Gatsby Cloud, is going to listen for events. It's going to listen for publishes. And these publishes will then trigger a build, an incremental build. And so what this then means is that Gatsby is serving as, think back to the days of FTP. Gatsby is continuously deploying, continuously listening, continuously updating your content. So your content creators, your content editors can continue to publish as they will. And then you, the developer, can choose the tools that you like to be effective, likely a tool in the Jamstack space. So I want to show one other new feature of Gatsby Cloud, and then I'm going to show a little bit of code as well. So how this is all wired up is like quite simple. So as I mentioned, Gatsby has a source plugin ecosystem. So you npm install, this Gatsby source WordPress plugin. This will soon move out of experimental phase. You pass a URL, the path to your WordPress instance. This may be a WordPress instance that you already have. The switching cost benefit could be Gatsby as template layer, but continuing to use WordPress. Again, use the tools that you like to be effective. As a developer, I want to use React. I want to use this plugin ecosystem. I want to spend less time kind of learning about the API, and I want to spend more time building out, iterating, and adding features to my excellent web experience. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some simple little updates. So we'll update the header, and then we'll say, actually, let's update this page. So we'll add an H1, and we'll say, hello world from FIDC. And then what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and branch. The modern dev tooling has changed. The deploys to production and pushing to your master branch are behind us. And now teams of developers working on sites like this use a branching workflow. So I'll say, hello world. I will add content. And then I will push to this hello world branch. What I'll do next is I will open the PR. Oops, window. Open the pull request, and then we'll see how things are working. So what you'll see is a couple of things here. So what has now happened is Gatsby Cloud is generating a deploy preview. This deploy preview is going to do a few things. first of all, as a developer, I want to know what my work looks like in context without needing to, before I deploy to production. So this is giving you kind of a sanity check that, hey, I think this will work the way that we expect. And so concurrently, as this is building out, and once this is built, it will also generate a lighthouse report. So I have a sample here that I can show from a previous build. So what this will do is this will add a comment to your pull request so that, again, using the tools that you like. As a developer, I like to use GitHub. You can see the deploy preview. You can see what this looks like. And then you can also see the updated performance metrics. So Lighthouse performance, 98, accessibility, 100, best practices, 100, SEO, I got to approve that, you know? So I'll go take a look at the full report, and then I'll see how I can improve with some great kind of updates from the Lighthouse report. So page is blocked, robust.txt is not valid, got to fix that. So that's kind of the broad spirit of the demo. Basically, again, it's showing, using the tools that you like, using the tools that you can be effective. The GM stack is stitching together these tools. It's using the best of breed tools for not only the developer, but for the editor, for the marketer, for the team who builds a website. Because a website, those days of a single person building a website are well behind us. It's now teams, each of which want to use different tools, each of which have different expectations, each of which want a different workflow for them to be effective. And I see the Jamstack, specifically Gatsby and Gatsby Cloud, as fitting squarely into this model, helping teams be empowered and helping us build a better web together. So with all of that said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to now take questions. So go ahead and leave them in chat. And then I'll answer them, as they come up. So questions about WordPress, about Gatsby Cloud, about Gatsby, about the Jamstack, about Gatsby open source, any kinds of questions I would love to help answer. Oh, thank you, Cam. I'll pin this question. So Cam asked, hey, Dustin, do you see room for a marketplace fitting into the Gatsby ecosystem? For example, WordPress has paid plugins, Shopify has the marketplace. Definitely. Now, the time horizon, I think, is the more interesting, is a more interesting question, like when will this happen? But I see this as kind of an inevitability and more like a when rather than an if. And so for us, as we're thinking of this, it's, Gatsby Cloud could be the way in which you kind of choose, you kind of pick you pick the plugins, you pick the source plugins, you pick the hosting integrations, where I want to deploy. I could see Gatsby Cloud fitting really well in this. And then even further still, there's certainly an opportunity for a kind of like local experience where you can kind of think in terms of outcomes. So I want to add Auth0 to my site. And there's some pretty cool, there's a pretty cool recent feature of Gatsby called Gatsby Recipes, where you can kind of get a vaguely marketplacey like experience, without needing to be a deep expert. Again, harkening back to what WordPress delivered, which is, a way that you can get to a reasonable level of sophistication without needing to be an expert in that domain. So TLDR of that long-winded explanation is yes, almost certainly. Not sure when, but of course, more info forthcoming once that kind of makes sense. So Rootbeer 19, in terms of React app, when is Gatsby not the ideal solution? So I'm a huge believer, and I'll be like abundantly transparent here, in that there's no silver bullets in tech. And I actually think that when you as a solution in that space owns where you're not ideally situated, and then even further still when you are, I think that's a really important thing to kind of clarify. So for us at Gatsby, I think of us squarely as building the content web. When you have a site that is powered by some type of source mechanism, it could be a source plugin, it could be a local markdown packed blog, could be a WordPress CMS, as we showed with Gatsby News. All of those work uniquely well. And then at a certain scale, the overall build process will get a teensy bit slower. And so, if you have 500,000 articles and you need each of them to be live immediately, a tool like Gatsby, where content is generated ahead of time, may not be ideally situated. So for us in Gatsby, what we think of as our sweet spot is, you're likely using a source plugin. It could be Gatsby source file system, which is a way to source markdown files. It could be a CMS. Gatsby is your supercharger to get something built out, to get something amazing built out, because we optimize and do all the heavy lifting for you. And again, kind of deliver the experience that your end users need to be successful. So for us, that's kind of our sweet spot. That's what we're focusing on. And in particular, we're focusing on teams building websites, agencies who are building out these websites quickly, and who want a great experience using Gatsby, and who, may and likely will use Gatsby Cloud to build, deploy, and collaborate with their team. So great question. Polly asked another question. So can WordPress be used with MDX? Could we have components in a WordPress editor that render the JSX in the site? So I know Jason and Tyler, or at least Jason's on the call, but GatsbyJS.com, if I recall correctly, is a good illustration of how this actually works. So for anyone who doesn't know, GatsbyJS.com is backed by WordPress. So every blog post that you see is using WordPress as a content backing solution. And so I'm not intimately familiar as to whether WordPress can be used with MDX, but I do know there's a notion in which we have like blocks. And so in the Gatsby blog, we have code snippets. And so you can kind of get a good sense of how this could work. So don't have the perfect answer for this, apart from we're doing something quite similar, and definitely reach out to us on Twitter or at support@gatsbyjs.com, and we'll get kind of a better, firmer answer to that question. A really good question, Polly. Any more questions? In lieu of questions, I like asking questions of the audience. So for anyone who has used Gatsby, why did you choose Gatsby in the first place? Like, what was the first thing that you built with Gatsby? And so for context, for me, I can probably share my screen. Give me one sec. So harkening back to kind of what we discussed earlier, what was the first thing you built? Well, first thing I built was not with Gatsby. It was that simple little high school website. But the first thing I built with Gatsby was this blog, and so I think this is a pretty common kind of first thing someone builds with Gatsby is they build a blog, they build a portfolio to kind of get their feet wet and to kind of see what building with Gatsby looks like. How you can source from Markdown, how you can source from MDX. And so my guess, kind of backed by a lot of research, is that most people start with Gatsby in the same way. So definitely reach out, if you've used Gatsby, if you've kind of hit pain points, because definitely I always want to make sure that we're kind of addressing each of them and that everyone's having that great first day experience that we deliver and will always deliver with Gatsby. So yeah, let me add another question/comment from RootBeer19. So he or she said, appreciate it. Currently trying to get the agency I work at over to reaching for Gatsby frontend and WordPress backend more often rather than solely WordPress. So yeah, this is, I think, a really common thing. And this is, to me, where Gatsby Cloud really fits in. Because when we think of like what is happening right now, this is exactly what the presentation was kind of hinting at. It's that, RootBeer19, I'm presuming, you're a developer at an agency, but please use the chat to correct me if I'm wrong. And you want to use tools that excite you, like the quote from that I mentioned earlier around like the things we do on the weekend. Like that's the things we're going to be doing in 5-10 years. Like you want to use those tools, but your pitch doesn't necessarily go over well, to the agency, because really what you're saying is, you're taking away things. You're kind of putting Gatsby in the middle. Your life is happier, and I think with Gatsby and Gatsby Cloud, this is exactly the experience and like the exact persona we're trying to capture, which is, how can we best help set up Group Year 19, of course, and like everyone else who wants to use Gatsby, who doesn't want to like deeply learn PHP and doesn't really need to learn PHP, but then like make that pitch go as easy and effective as possible. So Cam, we chose Gatsby back in the 1.0 days to build Ecobee's website. I have heard that. I think I've talked to a couple of people on the Ecobee team about using Gatsby and Gatsby Cloud, and so yeah, I've oftentimes found that there's a real use for Gatsby for anyone kind of building their company's website. So my high school website could have been built with Gatsby back in the day, but like Gatsby is a great thing to kind of dip your toes into with that personal site, with your company's site. It works really great for a site like Ecobee, because can't correct me if I'm wrong, I'm presuming that you have people editing content. That content may live in Contentful or WordPress or somewhere else, but you can get a uniquely great result. Instead of using WordPress to host, to build, and deploy, you use Gatsby to build, and you just use WordPress as the content management solution. All right, any other questions? Keep them coming. I love a good question. Oh, cool. Cam confirmed. Yep, using Contentful. I think it's a really common use case is, the content team uses content management solution X, and then you as developer who wants to build a site with Gatsby can build and deploy. I didn't even mention it. I should have mentioned this. For the price of a latte, like that Gatsby news site cost me $3 a month. My only cost is light sale of AWS. Other than that, the builds and deploys are happening in Gatsby Cloud. I deployed over Vercel, and it works quite well. Yeah, so Root Beer 19 has another comment. So dev at an agency. Cool, that's kind of what I thought. And first experience was a marketing site that sources from YAML for cloud solutions company. Current pitch at our shop is has been mostly dev experience, which is hard to sell. Agreed. So my advice here. So I'll broad stroke the question that the benefits of Gatsby, the benefits to the developer are hard to sell. I think the best case, particularly for someone at an agency, is understanding the like business case and the dollars and cents value for what you're giving them and what you're giving back. So like to me, what's a great experience measured by is that you're able to be more efficient. You're able to get more code shipped. I wouldn't say more code. You're able to get more features, more functionality shipped more quickly, and you're going to have, in my opinion, a hell of an easier time hiring React, kind of modern front end developers instead of hiring people who edit PHP templates. So there's that benefit, which is cost and cents benefit in dev time. And I also think there's another huge cost or a huge benefit to the marketing team, which is that Gatsby performs really well in kind of all kinds of modern performance tests, web page tests, Lighthouse, and like other kinds of like metrics and kind of ways to assess performance. There's real dollars and cents of value to a faster performing site. Conversion rates are better when you're fast and mobile optimized. People stay on your site longer when your site is fast and like a delight to use. And to me, DevX leads to those two outcomes. So it's DevX and getting a faster site more quickly. And then there's value in, actually having a fast site. So great question. John Hansen. is Gatsby Cloud Functions better able to handle builds and deploys than other cloud delivery systems available? Yes, so in the Gatsby space, Gatsby Cloud is uniquely tailored to be especially fast, especially optimized for Gatsby applications. So Gatsby is, the fastest and best build and deploy solution for Gatsby in the cloud, and it's moving towards, and already it kind of has like a really good collaboration story. So not only is that kind of commodity that builds and deploys provided and available, but we also have a way in which you can collaborate with your team. You can make the pitch as a developer, going to your agency, going to the person who makes the decision around, you're getting the experience that you need for your end user. So Polly, the Gatsby Cloud build times are indeed blazing fast, but I did experience really slow deploys to Netlify. Is there anything in the works to help speed this up? Oh, Polly, great question. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to show something that we've been working on. So unfortunately, not demoing the feature, but a way in which these types of feature requests can be routed to the right people. So I am pulling up portal.gatsbyjs.com, which is a way that you can submit ideas in a way that you can kind of see what's been voted on. And so this Gatsby Cloud Preferred Hosting is something that we are actively considering and that we plan to kind of work on. And so, yeah, for a better user experience and fewer user decisions, we should by default deploy to a Gatsby Cloud endorsed hosting integration. So we're certainly working on improving, the overall builds and deploy experience, because to an end user, they don't care about the separation. They care about my site is available after I publish content immediately to a CDN wherever my users live. And that's the experience that we plan to deliver with Gatsby Cloud. All right, looks like I answered John and RootBear19's questions. Any other questions? Like I said, I love them, and definitely want to answer them. Throw hard ones my way, throw softballs my way, whatever you're thinking, whatever kind of questions you have about Gatsby front end, would love to help answer. All right, I'll just pin this from Lacey, who does work at Gatsby. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation. Certainly always down to give a little bit of time back. If you have any, oh, no, I got more questions. All right. John, does Gatsby Cloud have the ability to handle backend functions like a mail system, data collection? I probably need to know more about the use case. Gatsby Cloud specifically doesn't have a solution for this today, but it depends on like what your use case is. So generally, kind of by being in the Gatsby ecosystem, by being in this, Jamstack solution, what most people typically do is they have some type of like microservice architecture or some way in which, they can build out this functionality as easily as they can build out the functionality of, the modern website with Gatsby. And so backend functions we support if our hosting integrations support them. So Netlify and Vercel notably support these. But as to specifics, like I would need to know more about the use case before I could like adequately answer. Hopefully that answered the question mostly. And then, if you do have like, if I didn't quite get the spirit of it, like definitely take the time, reach out on Twitter or, to support@gatsbyjs.com, and we'll get you a reply to your question. All right. John said thanks mostly. Yeah. Definitely reach out if I can give a better answer to it. Just need a little bit more context, but definitely appreciate the question. So with all of that said, I wanted to first give a call to action to attending another one of these talks. So Obinna, one of my great colleagues, will be giving a talk on improving the web visually at 2 to 2:45 Eastern, which is now, I believe. And so, yeah, in a minute or two, go to check out Obinna's talk. And thanks everyone for swinging by. Hope you enjoyed the presentation and have a great rest of your Wednesday.